In this lesson, we'll learn about the soft modification tool. We can think of the soft modification tool like a cluster that has automatic fall off. So this is a great tool to use when, let's say, molding blend shapes, as we get some really nice smooth results initially. We can access it a few ways, either from our toolbar or from our Create Deformers menu. If we were to go to the option box, we can go ahead and reset our settings and take a look at some of the options we have. So at the top, our fall off radius, this controls what region we will initially control with our handle that we apply on our surface. Then our fall off curve, this controls how intense the soft modification deformer will control what area we apply it to. So right now this is more of a smoother fall off. We'll get more of a smoother pull. As we start to increase this, it's going to increase that intensity, thus causing the pull to be a little bit more rigid. And then we have our fall off mode. Volume is going to adjust the deformations of the entire surface, whereas if we were to switch this to surface, this is a great setting to use for getting into tighter areas. So for instance, we can use surface to adjust the upper lip of this character while leaving the lower lip alone. Color feedback is very helpful because with it we can see what areas are going to be influenced the most and the least. Areas in yellow are influenced the most, whereas if we see any black, those are areas that are influenced the least. Preserve history is what we would use if we like to keep our soft modification handle connected to our mesh. So if you've ever used this handle and you have clicked off your surface and realized that it disappears, well, chances are you don't have preserve history on. So we want to make sure that's on if we'd like to continue to edit the results of that deformer. Mask unselected, with this on, what that's going to do is create more of a radial region around the points that are affected by the deformer. And then following that, we have fall off around selection for a smoother fall off. And then we can also determine what axes are going to be affected once the fall off is applied to your soft modification. So with that said, let's say we go ahead and activate our soft modification tool. And now we can go in and, let's say, add a handle around the character's lip. Initially, you can see the radius is rather large. So if we would ever like to bring this down, we can do this interactively by holding down the B key and dragging with the left mouse button. So now as we start to pull this point around, we're only affecting this area. And by taking a look at things, we're actually working with surface. So you can see that clearly because right now, we're really only affecting the upper lip. The lower lip is not really being pulled too much at all. So after the handle has been applied, you can always go ahead and switch this back to volume if you need to from your attribute editor. So if we were to head over there, here it is underneath the soft mod tab, and underneath fall off attributes, you'll find your fall off mode. So we can switch this to volume. And now we're going to influence a greater region. And then we also have our graph that we saw in our options. So we can use this curve to control how intense the soft modification handle will be. So with this set to default, we get a smoother fall off. However, if we were to start to increase that graph, you could see how we're getting more of a rigid result, how the pull is greater. So I'm going to bring this back down so it's not as intense. Now from there, we can go ahead and bring our attention to the channel box and take a look at a few other settings we have. Let's see, I'll go ahead and undo back to where the handle was originally. That's one way of getting that handle back. Or another way, if you're under your soft modification handle, which I'll go ahead and undo again, head back over to the tool. If you find that it disappears, if you were to go to one of your manipulators, let's say the move tool or the rotate tool, either or, you'll see that the handle stays. All right, well, from there, if we were to select the handle, we can head over to our channel box and take a look at a few other settings we have. So we can adjust our radius. We could also adjust the fall off center. And you'll see that as that center shifts, we're getting some really nice skin sliding. We actually rigged this to a muscle in our squash and stretch course. So we kind of discussed that technique of creating skin sliding. And then also what we have is the fall off in X, Y, and Z. Again, what axes will be influenced by the fall off. We can always turn off Y, for instance. You saw a change in our mesh, how in the Y axis, we're not really going to get too much fall off at all. We can also adjust that in the Z axis. So we turn that off. You can see again, that's going to affect the influence of our soft modification handle. But chances are you may want to leave these on so all axes will be influenced. But that's basically a look at the soft modification tool. Again, an excellent tool when wanting to mold your expressions for your blend shapes, or even, as we discussed earlier, we can use this to create skin sliding for muscles, which we again teach in our squash and stretch course. If we wanted to, from here, we could always adjust our center to kind of bring it back to where it was before. I'll also activate the handle from the toolbar, and as we start to shift that setting, so as we start to bring this over in the X and bring that up in the Y axis, going back to soft modification handle, you'll see how things start to shift.